Daniel, walk us through what is happening in France today in your view, because obviously when he came into office, Emmanuel Macron was the darling of the business community. How much leeway does he really have, do you think?
Well, Macron faces his most critical election. As we know right now, the risk of a very high level of abstention and the risk of the two candidates behind him being both from the extremes is very significant for France. In terms of the economy, Macron has not delivered on the promise of reviving a stagnant economy. Obviously, there's been the COVID crisis and there have been numerous challenges in this tenure. But it is true that his promise to reduce the very high level of expenditure of the public sector and his promise to improve the level of productivity and growth of the economy has not been delivered yet. There's a little bit of concern there, because on the other hand, the extreme right and the extreme left are making promises that may seem palatable for some voters, but obviously might be extremely dangerous for an economy that faces its most critical moment in decades, because in the next 5 to 10 years, France is going to have to decide between being the leader of growth and jobs of the European Union or being a stagnant, overweighted public sector economy.
And no doubt that has a lot to do with who will actually be leading the country. When you think about this a bit more broadly, given what we're seeing in terms of the geopolitics, I was following Mr. Macron around the G7 and NATO meetings in Brussels a week or so ago, and I asked him specifically about China. What would the NATO members, the G7 members, be prepared to do if China were to give military aid or financial assistance to Russia? And he really couched his response. And of course, that has direct implications for what he's trying to do in France in terms of the economy. How worried should people be about the geopolitics making a major dent in the economy? And I'm not just talking about China, I'm talking about the energy situation as well.
I think they should be extremely concerned. In the Eurozone so far, the impact is severe because of inflationary pressures, but we have not seen yet any real supply disruptions. And that's where leaders like Macron that have been giving different options and have been very bold. Macron has initiated a new dialogue in terms of energy regarding, for example, nuclear that Germany abandoned. So it's very important at this juncture to have leaders in the European Union that actually have a vision for the future and that have a view that the European Union must find better alternatives than what it has been doing so far, which is to get into little arguments between countries and not a unified vision. In the latest messages coming from Mr. Macron, at least what we have seen is that he is trying to give a unified message from the European Union regarding geopolitics, regarding energy. Very important. He was the first leader to tell Russia that contracts must be fulfilled and that we are not going to be paying the contracts, the gas contracts, in rubles. So he has taken probably the leadership that Germany has in some way left a little behind in the last couple of years.
I was going to ask you that as well, because at the end of the day, when you think about what's been happening during his tenure, this is a man who has more often than not put himself front and center in the geopolitical sense. We talk about what he tried to do in Lebanon, as well as what's happening over the last several weeks with Ukraine and Russia. Do you think that has played well for him at home?
I think to a certain extent it has. And I think that if anything, given the very low turnout that is expected in this election and the narrow margin of difference between leaders, having a strong presence in the international community and having a strong leadership in terms of very important issues that were probably not something that the average citizen was talking about a few years ago, but everybody is talking about now. Everybody is talking about NATO in Europe. Europe, and a few years ago it seemed like NATO was something that sort of was forgotten, you know? So I think that in this case, it might make a significant difference in the way in which voters decide to make their decision in an environment in which there's still quite a large number of voters that are undecided.
Daniel, we're going to have to leave it there. Daniel Lacalle, Trust Suggestion, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, leave your comments below, and keep defending freedom. Thank you very much.